Oh, I'm really beardy today. Morning YouTube, and welcome to another scintillating episode of whatever I call these. Today we're going to be going over equal marriage. You may have seen the equal marriage debate in various different blogs and on BBC News site that's going through Parliament at the moment. As of the 17th of July, it got the royal assent, which means that it's the final stamp of approval before it goes into being officially enacted as law. However, there are a few things about the equal marriage which are less than equal. I have a guest here with me today, and through the magic of editing they shall appear beside me in an instant. There we go, that wasn't a jump cut at all.
Hi, I'm Jenny.
Hello Jenny.
Yes.
Explain to YouTube, how do we know each other?
Ollie and I know each other because we're both on the University of Nottingham LGBT Network Committee, and I'm the trans officer for that committee, so I know things about that.
Yep. Jenny is one of my fantastically informed colleagues. She knows literally everything and is invaluable in that she goes through all the different parliamentary debates and all of the notes and stuff that make me want to jump out of a window with shame and sort of anger at times, and knows everything about everything and anything.
Well, they do make me want to jump out the window sometimes as well.
Okay, so 6 reasons why equal marriage isn't actually quite so equal after all.
Number 1, consummation and adultery.
Okay, in an ordinary marriage, a traditional marriage, as in marriages before the Equal Marriage Bill went through, had consummation and adultery. A marriage wasn't consummated until the couple had sex, and this is by and large a very sort of dated throwback to old times where obviously your heir was very important to your estate and things like that. And adultery is a bit of a weird legal concept in its own right, isn't it?
Yeah, in English law there are 5 grounds by which you can get divorced, and one of those grounds is adultery, which means you have to have had sex with someone who's not the person you're married to. The second ground, which is unreasonable behaviour. So you'd think that adultery, if you're in a marriage and you don't want your partner to be going off having sex with other people, that seems to be unreasonable behaviour to me. So I don't entirely know why adultery is there as a separate thing.
Yeah.
But it's not there as a separate thing in same-sex marriage.
So, and this kind of stems from the whole fact that you'd think, oh well, equal marriage comes in, they just take all the legislation that's to do with marriage and then just copy and replace all the bits that say a man and a woman, which is what you'd think you'd do, and actually
find and replace wife with husband or wife.
Yes, exactly, which they've not done, which is apparent, as you will see going through. Number 2, the quadruple lock.
Right, so this is kind of an odd one because I don't really, there's kind of 4 things there, but I see it's really just there's 2, conceptually it's actually just 2 things. The first thing is that no religious organisation or individual can be forced to perform a same-sex marriage. That seems fairly reasonable to me.
Yeah.
The second thing is that religious organisations need to opt in. So unless a particular religious organisation opts in, they can't perform any same-sex marriages, and it needs to be the religious organisation as a whole that does this, rather than just one particular person. So if you're a member of one particular church, your church, meaning not just the building, but the entire organisation around it, needs to agree that same-sex marriage is allowed. But this is complicated by the fact that the Church of England and the Church in Wales are prohibited by law from opting in at all.
So even if they want to opt in, they're not allowed to. They have to change laws and do jump through a whole different set of hoops that other religions don't have to.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Number 3, premises that are licensed to perform marriages.
Okay, so the marriage law in the UK is a bit weird in that it's kind of more revolved around the premises that you actually do the ceremony in rather than the people taking part in it, which is weird unto itself. A result of this is that when the equal marriage law comes into effect, somewhere like a community centre, for example, that has a licence to sanction marriages within it, has a list of all the different religions that can do so within, and to conduct a same-sex marriage, every single one of those religions for that one location, not just like nationwide, it's location specific, have to then opt in and say, yes, I will allow this. Which, considering most of those organisations aren't the ones conducting the ceremony, is a bit backwards. Yeah. And it really limits the locations that you can have a ceremony in, because obviously you're going to be limiting off the ones you can have it in, which means that certain places are going to be more exclusive, which means that the cost goes up, and it means that you're going to have to look on a map and find out, right, well, I want to get married, it's all legal now, okay, there's only 2 places in my entire county within 25 miles of my house that will allow it. So it's a bit crap, really.
Yeah.
Number 4, pensions.
Because of how this legislation works and how it interacts with other pieces of legislation, if you're in a same-sex marriage and your partner dies, it's quite possible that you'll be entitled to less survivor's pension, because you'll only get the pension from that they've contributed to since 1988 or 2005, depending on factors.
So this is something that obviously, if you're in a quote traditional marriage, you don't have to contend with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Number 5, straight civil partnerships.
At the moment, only same-sex couples can enter into civil partnerships, and once the Equal Marriage Bill goes through, only same-sex couples can go into civil partnerships. Now, this is a bit of an odd one, because part of you thinks, well, if everyone can get married, why would a straight couple want to go into a civil partnership? And I suppose that really depends on the couple.
The fact of the matter is there are some couples that have said they do want a civil partnership, and they are coupled with a man and a woman. And since some people seem to want it, and there doesn't seem to be any reason not to have it.
No. Although the demand for it isn't enormous, why block people from doing it if that's what they want to do? So yeah, this is a bit of an odd one, really. Number 6, spousal veto and stolen marriages.
Right, so this all revolves around the concept of what's called a GRC, or Gender Recognition Certificate, which is basically a piece of paper you can get from the government that says, well, you may have been born X, but now you're Y, and we're going to treat you as Y. It protects you from a number of discrimination things. Before this legislation came in, if you were married, you couldn't get a GRC. What you could do is get what's called an interim GRC, which only allows you to dissolve the marriage. We're going to make it now so that you can get a GRC when you're married, but your spouse needs to give consent for this to happen. They've tried to spin this as consent for the marriage to continue, but that's not what it is, because the fact of the matter is, if they don't give you that consent, the marriage continues, you just don't get the certificate. And that's what people are referring to as the spousal veto.
Okay, so at this point, some of you may be thinking, but surely, if your partner doesn't agree with your transitioning, then the marriage will end anyway, so surely the spousal veto is just a logical conclusion of that.
Well, it's not that simple. It's probably best explained if we look at some examples. Okay, this is Bob, and this is Alex, and they are happily married, but at some point Alex decides that he's actually a trans man and decides to transition. And in order to get the gender recognition certificate that makes Alex legally male, the marriage needs to be dissolved and it can be replaced by a civil partnership. Later on, this new marriage bill comes in and they can convert the civil partnership back into a marriage, but there's still a period for which they had no marriage, and this is referred to as a stolen marriage. There are 151 cases of stolen marriage in the UK. It's not a great number of people that are affected by this, but those that are have spoken very emotionally about it. For example, someone described the civil partnership, sort of in context with the marriage they originally had, as being more like a business arrangement. So obviously this is upsetting for a lot of people, and it wouldn't hurt for the government to at least attempt to address these things. Right, so scenario B, once again we have Bob and Alex. Alex again decides to transition to be a man. So now Alex wants to get his GRC, but Bob's not happy about this. Then for whatever reason, either this or something else, the marriage isn't going that well. So Bob refuses to consent to Alex's GRC. This doesn't really have any effect except stalling Alex getting his GRC while they have to go through divorce proceedings, and which actually Alex needs to initiate in this case, and it can be both emotionally upsetting and financially costly.
So it doesn't actually help them to split up, all it does is it stops Alex from transitioning.
Yes.
So what would happen if Bob were to consent?
Right, well that's scenario C. So again we have Bob and Alex. Alex transitions, Bob consents, and the marriage continues. They may choose to split up after that point or not, but that's fine. So on a semi-related note, there's an existing get-out clause for spouses of trans people that isn't fixed by this legislation, and it really ought to be. If we consider scenario D, we have Bob and Alex again married, And this time, Alex transitioned before the marriage, and Bob doesn't know that Alex has a GRC. If Bob finds out about this GRC, the marriage can just be annulled immediately. It gets worse because Bob can just say he didn't know, because it's very hard to prove that he did. So having this particular get-out clause doesn't really do anything besides enshrine in law this idea of the deceptive trans person, which is just a damaging negative stereotype, and it's unnecessary.
So there you go, 6 reasons why equal marriage isn't quite as equal as you hoped it would be. Now we've discussed a lot of negative things in this, but we want to leave you with a positive message because by and large the Equal Marriage Bill is a huge step forward for all LGBT people in terms of equality.
Yeah, it's definitely a big milestone in the roads to LGBT equality, and it does have issues, but hopefully those issues won't be there forever.
So bearing in mind the negatives that we've discussed, we hope that everybody who is affected by this bill embraces it in a positive way and works towards making it even better and rejoices in the freedoms that it gives you. So it's almost time for us to go now, so I will say thank you very much for Jenny for coming.
Thank you for having me.
No problem, you've been awesome, and it's goodbye from me, and I will see you next time.
And it's goodbye from me, and I probably won't.